Hi, welcome to this presentation on lesson planning. My goal for this particular presentation is to teach you how to develop lesson plans and also to help you with your signature choice assignment and the lesson plan guide part of that assignment. We talked about some of this information in the curriculum design. Lesson that was for designing a entire course. This information is just for designing one specific class session within your entire course. All right. So let's try to keep some of that information in mind when we talked about curriculum design for our lesson planning. So I am doing this presentation a little bit differently than my previous ones. We're not using PowerPoint at all. I have a lesson guide, a lesson plan guide, and a lesson plan template documents in the class that hopefully you've downloaded and you have in front of you so you can actually see what we're talking about and we can go over this together. I'm not going to read everything that I have on there. That's what you can read on your own. I'll just try to explain this to help you. And so you know this template that I have for you, this is what you'll actually turn in for the signature choice assignment to me and to your fellow students in the presentation. This is the actual lesson. All right, so let's start. Lesson planning. I'm going to talk about the components that we should have in a lesson plan, and then I'll kind of go in a different order than the actual components. So in each lesson, we should have an introduction. Then we should have our learning goals or student learning outcomes, the lesson sequence, which is the order, the body of a lesson, conclusions, and assessment. And so the typical order that we'll actually design a lesson is here we'll start like we talked about earlier in our curriculum guide, our curriculum development, is we need to look at the situational factors. We'd actually do this for when we're designing our course. So we'll need this information for this lesson because it's critical for our lesson. So I want you to provide the situational factors for your quote class, but for this lesson. So you're going to have to make up some of this information. You may need to use your previous athletic training education program information about that. You have to decide if this is a lower division, upper division, so freshman, sophomore, or a junior, senior level class. What class does this lesson fit into? Is it an assessment class? Is it a risk management class? All those types of information. So again, try to use your previous athletic training education program. Now, if you didn't go to a Katie accredited program, ask somebody else in the program to help you with this. No reason, or if you have one around you, try to get some information online from them. So again, you're making all this up, so it doesn't have to be perfect. So you're going to include this information and here in a situational factor in your template. So you're just going to list them. You can bullet point them. You can put them in whatever way you want to make it that looks good, just so I can understand what your situational factors are. One of the other things that you have to make a decision about is the length of the class. Length of the lesson, I should say, or class session. So is this class, is it 60 minutes? Is it 90 minutes? Is it whatever that is? Whatever your length of class will be. So you have to fit your lesson. Is the lesson going to be 1 day, 2 days, a week, all those type of thing. So you just have to make those decisions on how you're going to teach this class, okay? Another thing you need to include is this going to be in a classroom, lab, or is it in a clinical setting? Whatever one works best for you. For our assignment, you need to tell me your topic. All you have to do is list it. Say your topic is peer assisted learning. You just put peer assisted learning. If you're doing a different teaching method, just include the teaching method there. Student preparation. What do the students need to know before they come into class? What do they need to do? Do they need to read certain chapters of textbooks? Do they need to review videos? Whatever the student needs to come prepared to do in order to be successful in that lesson. All right. So that's everything I have up here. That's what I just talked about. The next thing we would do before we even start anything else with our lesson plan is we want to write our student learning outcomes. So as a reminder, I want you to pick one content area from the athletic training and educational competencies and then one of the expected outcomes. It either can be the knowledge and skills, or it can be a clinical integrative proficiency, or a CIP. I just want you to list that here on the template, and then from there I want you to list both the content area. So if it's I can't remember some of the content area on top of my acute, I'm blanking on one of the content areas right now, prevention or whatever. Just list it and then put the expected outcome word for word, quote it, cite it, and then you're going to write your student learning outcome or student learning objectives, whatever terminology you want to use it. They're all pretty much the same for the lesson. Oh, I just noticed I had the wrong word on the template. There you go. All right. So as we talked about in our curriculum development lesson, when we're developing a student learning outcomes, student goals, all those type of things, we want to have some areas. We want to have a verb. We want to have behavior, the condition, and a criteria for mastery for that. So for this particular example student SLO, I'm just going to call them SLOs. This comes straight from our syllabus for this class, and so we have our verb, which is develop. So that's our verb. This can develop in the Bloom's taxonomy. It can fall into one of these three areas on Bloom's, and this is Fink's. So the question is, which level on Bloom's is it? I'm going to say that since we have this word sensitize, I think it falls into this in Bloom's. Okay, so we have to have a verb. The student will be able to develop, so they're going to develop something. What are they going to develop? Here's the behavior. So this is what we're going to develop. They're going to develop strategies that sensitize current athletic training and education literatures on learning and motivation in order to actively engage all learners to produce optimal learning. So that's our behavior that we expect our students to do. Then the criteria for mastery, the level that we expect for mastery is with a score of 80% or greater. And the reason why we're using that is because on our syllabi, that is what is expected for our graduate students to meet the university standards to graduate. And so the condition is on the signature choice assignment. Okay, so that is an example of a student learning outcome, SLO, that you should just include one, at least one, and probably only one for your lesson. Okay, so all this is preparation. We haven't even started talking about our lesson yet. Oh, we haven't. One of the other things that we need to know before we start our class is the equipment, the materials, or technology we need. Like if you're teaching a lab class, do you need tape? Do you need braces? Do you need taping tables, treatment tables, whatever you need ice, you need ultrasound, all those different types of things that you need, just list them there. So we finally get to our lesson. Our lesson has an introduction, the body, conclusion, and assessment. Okay, so our introduction. What we're trying to do with an introduction is try to get the student's attention somehow, arouse some kind of interest in the topic, the lesson itself. Since this is typically, you're not teaching a lesson independent of itself in a course. Usually teaching a whole course, you can usually draw from previous knowledge and experience from the other parts of our class. So you want to connect what you did previously to what you're going to do in this new class, or lesson, sorry. I don't mean to get the terms class and lesson mixed up. I'm going to do it just so you know for what I'm talking about here. I'm going to try to use class for a lesson, meaning the same thing, whereas course is like we're taking Kinesiology 750, which is the course, and this is a lesson about developing lessons. I don't mean to confuse you, which I probably will. All right. For our template, I do want you to put how much time you think you're so you're going to say you think it's going to take you 5 minutes to do your introduction. I do want you to include how much time each one of these are. Say your conclusion is going to be 15 minutes. And so let's say you have a 60-minute class. So that's 20 minutes. So you have 40 minutes to do your entire body of your lesson. Then for each part of the body of your lesson, you need to include how much time each section of the lesson is going to take. So you have 40 total minutes to do it. So you have to break down all 40 minutes so you know what's happening in those 40 minutes. Okay, so we got the introduction. We got them interested in what we're going to do. And then we're going to do our lesson. So that's our lesson sequence. Again, for our particular signature choice assignment, you have to use either the athletic training, teaching, and learning topic in a lesson. So if you're doing learning styles, you would have to incorporate using various learning styles to teach that particular content, area, expected outcome, clinical, the CIP. All right. So you needed to describe how you would do that. All right. Now, some of the things with lesson planning is we want our students to be actively engaged in our lessons. We don't want to just lecture. I've read on some of the forums where students have said that in their teaching experience they've seen that either as a student or even as a teacher. You either were checked out or the other students were checked out because they just were not engaged in the lesson. So we want to make sure that we have active engagement through the lesson. So there's a lot of different methodologies out there. I would highly recommend some searching online. Like I said in the one of the other helps for this particular assignments, start becoming an expert in an area. Just because, let's say, you're doing the athletic training, teaching, and learning topic doesn't mean you can't use a specific teaching method to teach that particular topic. So there's all sorts of teaching methods out there. And there's a whole bunch of information online for them too. There is a book called McKeechie's Teaching Tips that you might be able to get on Google Books. That'll have all sorts of teaching styles for you to use. One of the shortcomings of this class is that I'm not going over every single teaching method because I'm trying to have you use this and investigate it through this signature assignment. Regardless of what you're doing, I want you to be very specific on what you'll do in the body of your lesson. I want it to be detailed enough where another teacher can use your lesson and teach the lesson by going through your lesson plan. Now, let's say you are using something, we're going to use handouts. Well, provide the handouts in your lesson for our assignment in this class. Also, just think about anything that you would need for that lesson. Include them in your signature choice assignment. But also, when you're thinking about it, when you're teaching, you should include that. So now, you're not going to turn in tape and the equipment, but you don't need to make a PowerPoint for our class, for your lesson for this. Okay, just talk about, I'm hoping you're all not just lecturing, so I don't want you just to lecture for this, okay? So you're going to have your body, and I'm leaving that pretty vague for this because that's really the point of that assignment. Now, your conclusion, you want to wrap everything up. I've been taught that when you're doing presentations, you use this statement. You tell them what you're going to tell them. That's an introduction. You tell them. That's the body. And then you tell them what you just told them. That's the conclusion. So you want to summarize the key points. You may want to check for some learning. See if they can remember it. And if you're going to have some kind of homework, or any other out-of-class experience, you want to explain that to them. And that's going to go into our assessment part of our lesson. How are you going to know that the students have met that SLO that you've written? We're going to talk about assessment. So what kind of assessment will you use? Is that assessment going to be formal, or is it going to be informal? You have to make that decision. Is this a formative or summative assessment? More likely it's going to be formative because it's in the class. I would actually like you to design an assessment for this. If it's going to be something that you can design a rubric for, design that rubric, or one of the other types of assessment that I'll talk about in that particular lecture. So it would be beneficial for you to actually create an assessment tool for this particular assignment, so it'll help you in the long run. I hope this has been helpful for you to understand the signature assignment, and hopefully it'll be somewhat helpful for you when you're designing a lesson. Really, you're going to be designing an entire course, but for a specific lesson, for a specific athletic training and education competency area, content area, and expected outcome, or clinical proficiency integration.